everyone. This is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well. I will be taking a deeper look into the most recent episodes of Love and Marriage DC, episodes 1 to 3. I will not be doing a full episode recap as there are plenty of other content creators who do a great job covering the show. Instead, I will be focusing on specific segments of the episode that I believe could be used as teachable moments for myself and the audience. So I'm going to start with the Tyler family, Jason, Jamie Sr., Jamie Jr., and Erana. And in the first episode of the season, the family is getting prepared to send their son, Jason, who has a disability, off to the Doors program. And the family is enjoying this party. And at some point, Jamie Jr. shows up late and looking disheveled and stressed out. So at some point in the party, Jamie and his father end up having an argument on the rooftop because Jamie Sr. did not like the fact that Jamie Jr. had an attitude with him after he refused to pay his ticket. And Jamie Jr. kind of implied that his family doesn't support him, so he has to rely on his girlfriend and his grandmother to help him out. And Jamie Sr. said that he's been giving his son $100 a week to just keep him afloat until he figures things out. But before the scene happened, Jamie Sr. explains that he had a job lined up for his son at a hospital, but because of his son's extensive criminal background, he failed the background check, which is normal. So now Jamie Jr. has to face the consequences of making the poor decisions that he did, which I'm sure frustrates the whole family. So underneath all of the anger and the impatience and the animosity and the frustration, I can see that Jamie Sr. is frustrated and scared to death for his son's future. I understand why he acts the way he does, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I understand his lack of tact and patience when it comes to his son. He's really afraid for him, and he does not want he doesn't want Jamie Jr. to become a victim of the streets. Jamie Sr. kept mentioning that his generation, Generation X, spoiled Generation Y by giving them material things, shoes, cars, clothes, money, and a suburban lifestyle that they didn't have to work for. So when he said that, I thought about the situation between 50 Cent and his son Marquise Jackson, who complained that his mother didn't receive enough money in child support. Of course, this caused a public uproar on social media, and at some point, 50 Cent revealed that he had to significantly reduce the $25,000 monthly child support payment because his mother was raising his son to be dependent on him, like the welfare system. So Marquise was being spoiled by his mother, to the point where 50 Cent bought his son a shoe store worth of inventory to start his own business, and his son basically squandered the opportunity. And 50 Cent said that he wanted his son to know the joy and the value of hard work and earning your keep as a man. So this is a very complicated discussion because, in my opinion, it is hard to judge Black American parents the same way we do parents of other cultures. In this society, Black people are only treated like Americans after we spend money or because we have money. Our perceived value is based on how much money we spend in this economy. And we only have civil rights because we heavily participate in this capitalist system. And in America, money is God. So if you have a lot of money, you are giving God praise and you become a God yourself, right? You're worshiping and respecting Jehovah or the Pope when you spend money or when you participate in the system. And this is one of the reasons why Black people are the most consumerist demographic in the country. We spend more money than any other race per capita, period. Trillions of dollars per year were spent with companies who do not care about us because we seek value in name brand clothes, shoes, houses, cars, whatever, right? So you're not an N-word anymore if you have on Prada, Fendi, Gucci, Balenciaga, and all these other name brands. Most of our goals are based on finances. So we do whatever it takes to make the money. And in some cases, we sell our souls or we sacrifice our children for the sake of making money. So most of our goals are based on finances because if you don't have a nice house or a nice car or live in a nice neighborhood, then you're considered a failure that deserves to be clowned, shamed, and denigrated. And this is why, a lot of us look down on blue collar workers as well. And I talked about this before. So just to give some historical context before I continue with the show. In the 60s, after we shifted from an agricultural economy to an industrial economy, we lost a lot of our nuclear family dynamics, because the large families that worked together on the farms side by side were now working in factories in New York City and St. Louis and Indiana and Detroit. And once we started working at these factories in these industrial cities, our children became wards of the state, in my opinion. So a few months ago, I stated that we cannot be living in a matriarchy, because in a matriarchy the children come first. In the patriarchy, money and industry are first. Capitalism is the patriarchy because it is a socioeconomic system that is designed to create false scarcity to make a profit. The men in the manosphere always talk about how they built the world around us. And in this age, they did, because God, right, for the purpose of this argument, I'll say God, okay? God gave man the ability to build outside of himself because he lacked the ability to create within himself, like women do when they give birth to children. So these men were bestowed with strength and creativity to create the tools that will help them to give birth to the ideas that were in their head. But in doing so, men also created a system to siphon our energy in order to maintain these artificial constructs, which are not self-sustaining because they do not have the ability to create the way women do. And this is again because women are innately a source of abundance in nutrition. This is why when media companies are marketing, they use women to sell products, because we attract resources naturally, especially if you're a beautiful woman. So when I was in college studying the philosophy of technology, we discussed how labor valuation was determined by gender. And labor and the technology that was controlled by men was automatically considered worth more than what women could contribute, because in a system that relies on false scarcity, a woman producing her own milk, her own breast milk, and eating from the abundance of nature will always have what she needs. So you cannot create false scarcity within women who are self-sustaining or who have the ability to produce milk for their babies, right, without relying on the system. This is for free, okay? So the things that are given to us freely, like a mother's love, guidance, and a woman's body, is not worth as much as a man using his hands to create false scarcity. So if you want to continue to dominate and subjugate women, you have to tell them that what they produce naturally is worth less than what is created in a factory. In other words, in this patriarchal system that's been dominated by men and created by men, we are more valuable to the economy and to society when we spend money and we go to work instead of spending time with our children, because guidance, love, and support are free. And in the patriarchal capitalistic system, raising your children is not the priority. Going to work to pay bills is, okay? And this is one of the reasons why, as women gain power in the patriarchy, many of them begin to abstain from having children because they believe that what they produce at work is their child. They believe their career becomes their child. They think that being equal means acting like men who usually do not put children first. By their very nature and the way that they're conditioned, men don't put children first. They put themselves first, right? So in many instances, women wanting to be equal to men means that they will have the same attitudes towards children that men do. And I think that it's very telling that many women say they want equality instead of balance, right? Just stay with me real quick, okay? In this system, it is not your job to take care of your children. The state will do that for you when you take them to daycare and to school for 8 to 10 hours a day, okay? So these children spend more time with their teachers and classmates than they do their parents and their siblings and their family. Your job in this system is to make sure you can work a job, pay taxes, and buy a bunch of garbage for Christmas. Forget nurturing your children because that's free. And what's free isn't worth anything in this system. This is why so many parents, especially single mothers, overcompensate by giving their children all the things they think they want. And most of the time, children just want what's free. Time, love, guidance, attention, and support. But a lot of us are too tired to do that, right? To give our children that after a long day at a job with people who suck or bosses who suck. Okay, so back to Jamie and his family. I honestly think that the parents in the situation wanted to keep up with the Joneses. Jamie and his wife Erana wanted to look good to other people. It is not Jamie Jr.'s fault that his parents spoiled him. This is why I always say that spoiling your children is not a flex. This situation is a testament to how destructive spoiling your children can be, especially black children, because when we fall, we tend to fall backwards, while white people manage to fall forward because of the socioeconomic safety nets they have to rescue them from their mistakes. And most black people don't have the luxury of making those same mistakes when we're young. So I think Jamie Sr. is petrified, okay? He is petrified. He is scared for his son's future because he really loves him. So at some point, Jamie Sr. suggested that his son get a job as a security guard. And of course, Jamie Jr. says no because he thinks he has options. Jamie Jr. wants to save face, so he looks down on a security job because he was raised by parents who dressed him up in the costume of success, with the best clothes, a nice house, nice car, best shoes, money, freedom, good education, etc. But Jamie Jr. didn't earn any of that. So he feels entitled to flaunt a lifestyle that he's used to, but he never had to work for. And this is why I always warn women about giving a man everything and trying to build him up, okay? Because these men usually resent you for giving him everything because you are denying him the opportunity to find his purpose, to find out who he truly is. These men end up resenting you or people who take care of them for having power over them. So a lot of these men who were taken care of by other people, they either become really, really helpless, right? They can't do nothing for themselves, or they cheat on their partners, like what Martell was doing with Melody. And they resent the person who's taking care of them at some point because now they need them, right? So anyway, Jamie Sr. is very frustrated, and he's low-key taking accountability by saying that he spoiled his son. But at the same time, he's blaming his son for being spoiled. It's like he's saying, I was such a good father, I gave you everything, now you're a spoiled rotten. I think Jamie Jr. is spoiled and entitled, but I also think that he's depressed. And this is usually what happens when men lack purpose. Men tend to become self-destructive, or people in general, when they don't know who they are, what they want, why they're here, what their values are, and where they're going. So a lot of these men become womanizers, criminals, or drug addicts. And this happens to spoil people of all races. If you watch Love After Lockup, Skylar, who's a white girl who grew up with some money, she went on a self-destructive path with drugs, and her mother admitted that she was spoiled and never had any responsibilities, no chores, no work, and so now she's bored and doing drugs. This is why, and it sounds weird for me to say this, okay? You guys want to get mad, but I'm going to say it anyway. This is why I'm an advocate for some level of suffering. And it sounds crazy to say this, but people really underestimate the value of suffering, especially in a society when we're told that we can do whatever we want and we don't have to pay for the consequence of our actions because we have social safety nets like welfare and, child support systems to kind of cushion the blow of bad decision making. Okay, so now we wonder why there's an obesity and drug epidemic in our country, because we feel like we can do whatever we want and we're pleasure driven. Okay, so I have Saturn highly aspected in my chart, so I can appreciate the value of suffering and sacrifice. I honestly believe that people are stronger and more complex, okay, and more humble, and they're more grateful in life when they struggle. Now, when I say struggle, I don't mean like starvation, getting beaten, molestation. I don't mean that at all, okay? But I mean that children and people should be denied things. Too many people want instant gratification and they don't want to work hard for the things that they want, right? And I think that struggling builds character and patience. And that is why we always admire our ancestors who had it harder than us, right? Those who fought wars, those of us who protested the government, raised 10 kids on a farm, right, without a father or whatever, while the father was off to war. We venerate people who struggle, but somehow we don't want to experience the same suffering, or we fear it for ourselves. And again, I'm not talking about torture and abuse. I'm talking about being deprived of the things that you say that you want, waiting a couple of months or a couple of years for the car, the house, or the man that you think you want, right? So yeah, when you have to wait for those things, it does build character, right? It makes you grateful for what you have. And we have to change our perspective on what suffering really is. Ascetics, Stoics, and monks often discuss how we need to find meaning in our suffering. And so when children like Jamie Jr. don't experience disappointment or struggle when they're younger, it is harder for them to stay motivated or to find their purpose. And this is why, as the Black community becomes more capitalist, the suicide rates are increasing. There was a study that explained how Black men suffer from mental illness at greater rates when they become successful in corporate America, which is the opposite for white men because whiteness is associated with success. So white men are conditioned to think that they're supposed to be successful, while Black men are taught that they're the exception, which is what causes imposter syndrome. And, there is an inverse relationship between mental health and financial success for Black men because there are certain aspects of their identity that they had to sacrifice to make it to the top. So back to the family. I do sympathize with everyone in this situation because I think that they all tried their best, but there is no handbook for being the perfect parent. It is Jamie and his wife's fault that their son is spoiled. I also think that Jamie Jr. may feel some kind of way because his younger brother got so much attention for his disability. Jason was born with a lifelong disability that poses as a challenge and a struggle. And I think that it strengthened his character. And not to compare the two boys and say that one is better than the other, but Jason does not have the luxury of doing what he wants to do when he wants to do it, like his older brother. He has to follow a straight and narrow path to success because of his disability. And in my opinion, when you have the freedom to do what you want to do, like we have in our communities since the civil rights movement, when you have the freedom to do whatever you want, with no fear of any consequences, you tend to lose your way. Our community became less disciplined. There was less respect for authority, for parents. We became self-destructive, and the rules and codes of conduct for maintaining a community were discarded. And this is why people like Erana and her fans get upset with us for calling out her bad behavior, because now it's the norm to be selfish and individualistic to the detriment to our loved ones, our communities, and our society as a whole. Okay? We attack people who try to correct us. A lot of Black people believe that being free means not having any discipline, not having a code of conduct, not being denied anything, not having to be responsible or held accountable for your actions or to follow any laws. We venerate and celebrate criminals and social deviants because we know the system is evil, right? But at the same time, we spend trillions of dollars every year seeking validation and acceptance from the same system we claim to hate, that we seem to want to destroy or to seem to want to rebel against. This is why W.E.B. Du Bois was like, Black Americans suffer from a schizoid identity. We love and hate America. We love and hate our unique identities. We're proud of our unique American heritage because it made us who we are, but we resent the fact that we got here through poverty, marginalization, and oppression. So I think that the Talib family wanted to emulate the Cosbys, but there wasn't enough balance. There was too much emphasis placed on material things, social status, and the veneer of success instead of guidance, love, and nurturing, because those things are cheap, which means they're not valuable, right, in this society. And as I said before, we devalue the things that are free and cheap because of the system that we're living in. And this is why people who work in social services and teachers, for example, make less money than individuals who work skilled trades or technical professions. I'm very happy that Jamie Sr. is open to therapy and family counseling. I think they all need it. But in my opinion, everybody is right. Ashley and her husband are correct about the situation. Jamie Jr., his father, they all have a point. Jamie is very hard on his son, but it's not because he doesn't love him. I think he's scared to death about losing his son to the streets because now his son seems to have less options. He knows about that life because he was a police officer for decades. And from his standpoint, I'm sure Jamie Sr. knows, about what happens to children who are raised in certain environments where there's poverty and lack of resources, poor education, etc. So he wanted to make sure that his son grew up in the suburbs. There's a lot more drama and trauma in the suburbs than people think, okay? A lot of these rich children who grow up with two parents in the household with money, they get into drama too. okay? And Jamie knows about this life because, again, he's an officer. I don't think that poor parents or single parents have a monopoly on dysfunctional upbringing of children. Well-to-do parents have similar issues, and we can see that manifesting in Jamie and his son's relationship. At the end of the day, we have to stop coddling boys in our community. I'm not saying abuse them, mistreat them, and neglect them. No, but they need to have responsibilities. They need to work for what they want. They have to. I'm sorry. Our community is suffering because a lot of these men don't have any skills. A lot of these men are lazy. They're entitled. They don't mind living with women or living off women. That's the way they were raised. So when you have a dominating parent like Jamie Sr., at some point the male child is going to buck. He's going to stand up to his father. That's the way it is. And Jamie's son is trying to assert himself as a man, basically. Jamie Sr. seems to rule with an iron fist, but I don't think that he shelters his children. But a lot of people like him become successful because they're rigid and they're disciplined. And they have to do things that they don't want to do to provide for their family. That's the mentality that he has. I have to give props to Jamie Sr. for sticking it through with his wife, because a lot of weak men would have abandoned their disabled children. And it seems like Jamie was there to help, not as much as Erana, but he was still there as a present father to an extent. I don't expect perfection from parents. It is not fair to do that to parents, because a lot of our parents in our communities, they were raised in dysfunctional environments too. Yes, we should want better and we have to do better, but I really like the Tyler family. I think they try their best. I think that they're they may have been a bit misguided about what was really valuable because they were parenting from a place of trauma and lack and fear instead of love and trust and faith. But at the same time, you need money to pay bills, to live in a nice neighborhood so your children can be safe. It's a catch-22. So I think that we can see how well-adjusted Jason is, who is following his parents' instructions and their guidance. He's doing really well because he's restricted and limited because of his disability. While Jamie Jr. got too much freedom. He's attractive, young, and parents would have money. So he's going to do what he wants to do. Now he's kind of in a catch-22. He can come out of the situation and recover, but he has to humble himself and take on a job that will pay the bills until he can elevate himself into a different situation. So now on to Ashley and DJ. Ashley talked about the fact that her mother abandoned her when she was 16 years old. And she survived through that experience to marry a relatively successful, hardworking man. But she's still dealing with the mental health issues as a result of some of the things that she went through in her childhood. She had an argument with her husband, DJ Quick, about waking her son up for school in the morning. And again, I agree with both of them. They're both correct, right? At 14 years old, Ashley's son should be getting up for school by himself. But at the same time, it's not killing Ashley to wake her son up for school in the morning. As a matter of fact, I think she enjoys doing it because it makes her feel like she's a good mother by waking him up. It's her way of nurturing him and making him feel like she's thinking about him first thing in the morning. Like she's the first thing he sees when he gets up and the last thing she sees when he goes to bed. And that gives the child a sense of security. So Ashley wants her son to feel like she's always going to be there for him. And that's why she's so adamant about being present for him in those moments. And she's a stay-at-home mother. She doesn't have to work a full-time job like that. I don't think it's killing her to wake him up. But I do understand his father's point. At some point, Ashley's son has to learn how to be responsible for himself. He has to learn how to get himself up for school and for work, right? My parents stopped waking me up for school like in 6th grade, if not earlier. But if my mother saw I was struggling to wake up for school or for work, she'd wake me up. I do understand that DJ Quick does not want his son to end up like Jamie's son, but I don't like the fact that they said that he's a bad kid, because I don't agree. I think he's just spoiled and misguided. He's been spoiled rotten because of what I mentioned earlier. So yeah, being a parent is difficult, no matter what your socioeconomic class is, and I see the love between all the parents for their children. But as far as Jamie Sr. and his son, there is some resentment there. I do believe Jamie's parents focus a lot on material success which to them meant that they were good parents, right? You know, it's crazy how poor and successful children or well-off children complain about how they're raised. It's interesting that there's complaints on both sides. But from the outside looking in, it seems like Jamie's parents were the type to want their children to fit in so that they don't look bad as parents, which is not necessarily terrible, but it warps the value system of the child when you do that. Like, a lot of parents compare their children to other people's kids. Like, as long as I'm doing better than these people's parents, then we're winning. And winning is relative and subjective. Having the newest pair of Jordans and an iPhone while your grades are trash is not a flex. And I wonder if Jamie Sr. pitied some of the poor families he served as a police officer. And the irony would be if some of those poor children are actually adulting better than his spoiled son. So it's not entirely Jamie Jr.'s fault that he's spoiled and entitled. It's his parents' fault. And I did notice that Erana's mother is still cooking for the family, even though everyone is grown now. I'm not saying that all mothers have to cook or are supposed to cook, but I do find it interesting that a mother of 3 has no desire to cook for her children, which is definitely how many mothers bond with their babies emotionally. People tend to associate their mother's cooking with love and good memories, regardless of how the food tasted, right? So just to be fair, Erana was raising a disabled child and she needed help around the house, and I will never judge a mother for getting help when she needs it. But last season, I remember watching Erana's mother struggling to walk down the stairs so that she could cook for the family, while Erana is healthy enough to walk several miles a day. I did think that it's a good idea for the grandma to live with them to help with the kids, especially with busy working parents, because as I said before, Erana and Jamie were probably too tired to fully engage with their children after a hard day's work. And this is a systemic issue, in my opinion, not a personal attack on the family. The system needs to change. We need to start valuing the free things more. Time, guidance, love, patience, nurturing, support, and stop overvaluing material things as a community in a society. So I love how the Tava family poured into Jason, and you can see how well they raised him based on how confident and independent he wants to be in spite of his disability. He wants to get up and be independent and do his own thing. I do think his parents were very attentive towards him in a way that they may not have been towards Jamie Jr. because of the situation they're in, which I'm sure is very hard to do. Like, it's so hard to raise a special needs child. Like, you know, there's guilt, there's grief, there's pity, there's sadness, there's fear, there's like all these emotions, and you still have to get up and go to work every day and make sure the children are at their best, right? So I really commend Jamie and Erana for doing a great job with their son. All parents make mistakes, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if Jamie Jr. was low-key jealous of Jason for the amount of attention his disability required. So one more note about the Tyler family, because I was supposed to be talking about Ashley and DJ Quick. It is interesting how Jamie Jr. seems to be mentally and emotionally handicapped, while Jason is physically handicapped. And we can see the differences in attitudes and behaviors based on their perspectives in life, right? So someone who's mentally handicapped can create a lot more problems for themselves than somebody who's physically handicapped. So even though Jason is blind and has some other challenges, his perspective and his outlook on life is a lot different than his brother's. And I feel that's partially because Jamie Jr. did not have to struggle as much as Jason did when he was younger. Not as far as like, having a disability and mobility and even cognitive ability. I'm not sure. But yeah, I can see that there's some challenges there. So Jamie was not born with a disability, and he was born handsome. He got money, parents are doing well, so he has a lot more freedom to be a fool and make mistakes. Jason didn't have that. Okay, so back to Ashley and her mother. So Ashley's mother basically abandoned her as a 16-year-old child to chase penis. She said that her daughter was a grown woman at 16. And I wonder if Ashley abandoned her children because she didn't want her man around her kids because her children are competition. not necessarily to protect them, but because you got 16-year-old daughters, your boyfriend may, try to make a pass at your daughter instead of you because you're 25, 30 years older. And to avoid that, you'd rather abandon your child and to go with a man who doesn't even care about your children enough to tell you to go back home to raise your family. So a lot of single mothers are starving for the penis. And she probably wanted to act like she didn't have any kids just so she could lay up and play house with a grown man. A lot of women resent their children, especially if they're not with the father. And it gets so bad that when their children becomes independent as teenagers, the parents stop showing up for them emotionally or financially. So regardless of whether or not the child is independent and self-sufficient as a teenager, it's like, now you're 18 years old, I've done my job, get out, right? I'm done. Because again, the child is a ward of the state. And according to the state, you're an adult when you turn 18. But your parenting should not stop at 18 years old. Your children need support and guidance from you as long as they need it. You don't want to handhold them and coddle them throughout life, but they need you to be there mentally, emotionally, physically, verbally, financially. Like, a lot of our parents throw their children away to the wolves when they turn 18 because, like I said, they're wards of the state. They're not in school anymore, right? They may not be going to college or whatever. They may have lost their way. Now they're adults, okay? And in some instances, if you're on public assistance, like, the kids start getting benefits for you for the parents when they turn 18. So that's even more of a problem, right? So because the children don't belong to the parents in this system, in the patriarchy, they belong to the state. A lot of our parents abandon us when we turn 18. That's it. So mothers like Ashley's raise their children because they have to, not because they want to. And I can understand why Ashley would have some resentment towards her because of that. But I'm hoping that she can actually let this go and not look to her mother for permission to have closure about this trauma. I think Ashley is a bit mean and crass, but I think she means well for her children and her family. And I think she's done pretty good for herself considering where she came from and how she was abandoned by her mother. It is crazy how Ashley's mom broke up with her dusty boyfriend when she wanted to reconnect with her grandchildren. Like, wow. How dare you expect me to dispose of my family to lay up with your insecure behind? So he sounds like garbage. And I would have never dated a man who needed me to act like I didn't have children so that I can give him all my attention. Like, who are you? Who are you? Wow. Anyway, so now on to Joy and Clifton. Why are they on this show? They don't even seem to be interested in the same things as the rest of the cast. I think all the cast are working class to an extent. DJ Quick is too, but he makes his money in entertainment. But yeah, Joy seems thirsty as hell to me. She's too old to be acting like that over Clifton. Like, she acts like this man is her entire life. Like, relax. I get it. You love him. That's great. But it's thirst to me. So even though Ashley was blunt and rude, she was right for questioning why Joy will be invited to speak to single mothers when she's not even a single mother. But Ashley is a type to keep it 100 about mostly everything, right? She was the same person who questioned why Winter, or how Winter was a relationship guru if she married a con man grifter after a few months of knowing him, and she had 2 children at home to raise still. So I think Joy was selected for this situation because this is about who you know, not what you know. It's like a networking thing. So yeah, it low-key sounded like hate a little bit. I could see some of the hate there, but they were right to question, like, how are you speaking to single mothers and you're not even a mother at all? That's weird. All right, now to Monique and Chris. Chris and Monique did not seem to be happy last season because Monique seemed miserable in their relationship. It was painful to watch her nitpick him every single day. So I think it was a good idea for them to not film the season if the scrutiny from the audience would have made things worse. And the fact that they didn't even show up to Jason's party to me indicates that there are some problems in their marriage, and I hope they're working on it. But Monique didn't seem happy. And I think Erana said in episode 1 that they're living in different houses. So of course they're separated. I think that Monique is the type to keep up appearances though. But with Saturn entering in Pisces and Chris's 8th house of divorce, they're not going to be able to fake the funk for 2 more years, in my opinion. Especially since Pluto is entering into Chris's 7th house of marriage. It's over. That marriage is a wrap. I'm just going to say it off the top. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to reading your feedback. If you want to order a personal tarot or astrology reading, you can go to my website. Also, I'm going to be changing the Patreon tiers. I'm going to be getting rid of the larger, more expensive tier and consolidating all of my readings into the smaller tier. Okay, so if you want to change tiers, please do so by the end of the month, because I'm going to be removing the tier that has the annual readings. It was not supposed to be up for the whole year, just for a few months for people to get their annual readings. Now that we're entering into March, I'm going to move those readings into the other tier. Okay, but I'll give you guys some more updates on that in the coming weeks. Alright guys, once again, I look forward to hearing your feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.